Absolutely. He could be the key to allowing you to have access to some of the drivers on the top of the list that you're a little bit more high on and just be able to really be comfortable with the rest of your lineup.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Joe.
and this is the Bristol Dirt Race.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. I don't know. I'm not even sure what we're doing here.
Yeah, I don't know either. So we're recording this a day or so later than we normally would record an episode because we were hoping to get some relevant information, such as qualifying and seeing the trucks on the track for a second time. Mother Nature had a different, decided to do something different.
Yeah, different plans playing out for us right in front of us, and we have to adapt just like they're going to have to adapt. What I'm really looking at is we were looking at a completely different experience about to play out with dirt being involved, Bristol, the Coliseum, all the fun things that are applied there. It's a made-for-TV event. And unfortunately, we got let down a little bit because of Mother Nature. It's NASCAR. We understand it. But one thing about dirt racing, if you don't know much about it, the heat races are part of the experience. You get to see people qualify for the event by just sheer, basically,
Determination.
gladiator experience in the Coliseum. That's what this is basically advertised as, and it really was
Shaping up that way.
Yeah, it should have shaped up that way because these heat races are everything. It's where you race into to improve your starting position, and it was really going to be an impact in the DK experience, and really would be something that would be relative whenever you're constructing your lineups. But now we're basically going back to a traditional starting grid and
Starting formula
because of this new way that we're having to basically reset the field, and it just doesn't bring the excitement that I was really looking for. I was expecting to sit on the couch and watch an hour and a half of just fun, just chaos ensue, and unfortunately, it just didn't happen.
No, if they are able to get the race in on Sunday, because there's still a high percentage of chance of rain. I think I saw 80 to 100%. So if they don't get too much, if the track can dry out, then they should be able to get this race in. I'm not convinced at this point. I think we may, unfortunately, be looking at a Monday race. We'll see. But it was kind of a weird. It was exciting right from once they started doing practice. It was really good, but also a lot of people were questioning how this thing was going to unfold because we saw something that apparently none of the drivers, the teams, NASCAR, even Goodyear thought we were going to have a problem with, and that was tires wearing out. These guys were set to do essentially 75, 100 lap stints, runs. They're not allowed to come in for pits, while it's green. The only time you can come in for pits is during stage breaks and competition caution. Well, these guys were out on practice. They were doing 40, 50 lap runs, and that right rear was turning into a slick. And they're not running slicks on this dirt track. So, and then the other thing is it was getting packed so hard that they were literally getting potholes in the track, and it was also tearing up that tire.
Man, you're talking about so much stuff that nobody even comprehends. Like nobody knows what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
From the guys prepping the track to the guys in the shops nobody can pinpoint anything right now, and that's the beautiful thing about it is it's going to be chaotic, and I'm excited because of all those things you just mentioned. Some people might learn from just that little bit of experience out on the qualifying event where they got to actually have some track time and experience that. And we saw our pole setter Kyle Larson unfortunately deal with some of the consequences of racing on dirt. He was overheating within the first, what was it, 15, 20 minutes that they were on the track.
In the second practice, because he looked good in that first practice.
He did. And so he is going to be one of those drivers that a lot of people have keyed as one of the favorites here going into it, because basically whenever you're looking at this, you're wanting to find people that have experience on the dirt track previous to showing up in the NASCAR series. And there's only a handful of drivers that have that experience. Kyle Larson being number one, and starting on the pole with his success early on this year, somebody that's a favorite, and now going out into something as simple as practice, and now he's starting in the rear. It's going to be impactful.
He was, if you just take the overall practice, Kyle Larson was number one in practice 2, and even with that engine issue, he still got quite a few laps in, and he was still the fastest overall in the second practice. So I think he just cooked that engine a little bit. He was getting a little bit more than he needed out of practice. But because of this, he has to drop to the rear. No matter what happens, he was going to have to drop to the rear. We were hoping that if he did poorly in his heat, maybe he wouldn't start up so high. But like you said, he's coming in first because of how he ran mostly last week and this year overall, starting first. So that's a tough spot for him. But the exciting thing is, we get to see him drive through the field. The scary thing is he has to drive through the field. So playing him in your lineups, you're going to have to do it, I'm sure, because he is really good, but you're also going to be nervous. So I'm going to be watching this mostly just from a fan position, just because this is going to be exciting watching him and some of these other guys start from the rear and work their way to the front.
And let's start by talking with, if anybody's telling you they know what's going to happen or how this is going to play out, you're getting bad information, because there is nothing about this that you can go back and look at any relative information, because this is the first time that the NASCAR drivers, or the NASCAR series has raced. Yeah, the NASCAR Cup Series has raced on a dirt surface in over 50 years. It was 1970 that happened. So anybody that says that they can put their finger on what's going to happen here, they're lying to you, because it's not going to happen. You don't know, we don't know, they don't know. It's just going to be fun. It's a made-for-TV event, like I said earlier, and us with coming in here from a DraftKings angle and just being fans of the sport, we're excited about it because it offers a completely different way to approach a contest, and is something that nobody has experience at. And we're excited because it kind of levels the playing field, and it's something we want to also caution people about. It's something where we have very little information to go off of. We have a idea of who we like, but honestly, it's a complete wild card race.
Absolutely. And for us, we don't have that dirt knowledge, that dirt track experience the same way we do normal cup races. It's just they haven't raced here in 50 years, and that's not something that we just usually have time to watch or even go see at our local tracks around here. So we're at a disadvantage, but most people are at a disadvantage. So that is what makes it fun. So for me personally, I'm not going to go as heavy in the DraftKings as I would normally go. I'm going to play it a little bit, I don't want to say safer, just not going to put as many lineups in and just try to have fun with it. I think I'm going to build some lineups just based on drivers that I like and not worry so much about value and all this other stuff, because if they finish the race, you might win just because of that, because I think these guys are going to really be getting into each other. We saw a few times several guys spin out on practice, and maybe different conditions come Sunday, but they're going to be getting into each other. It's going to be a demolition derby.
Well, that's what I was wanting to try to understand is I don't think it's going to be as much of a demolition derby as people think, because this is a points race, right? So you have strategy, you've got guys that know they have to finish well, and so there's a lot of strategy that's going to be part of this. And there's guys that are in positions with pit crew, or let's say crew chief and pit bosses that are basically in tune with what's happened in dirt racing and would have potentially been in their favor even more so if we would have had qualifying in these heat races that would have been able to basically dial in their car a little bit more as they get closer to Sunday and have this race play out. So there's a lot of factors that I think will lend themselves to where it might not necessarily be as much of a demolition derby as we anticipate, but I could also see it going down that path.
The reason why I would, normally I would agree with you because it is a points race and it's a big race, and it is a wild card race, so a lot of guys feel like they can win this. So you want to be smart, try to be there at the end. But here's the thing. Everyone's going to have that same mindset of this is the first and potentially only dirt Bristol race that these Cup guys will ever see. I mean, NASCAR may do it again, but we may not see it for 10, 15 years,
If
potentially.
ever,
yeah, if ever. So, guys on the back end of their career, the Kurt Busches, Harvick's, Kyle Busch, Hamlin, some of these guys that are long-term vets, they may never see a race on Bristol on dirt again. You want to be the guy that say you won the first one and potentially only one. And I think the guys are going to be aggressive, and I don't think very many people are going to be as worried about points as they should be. It's just it's almost going to be like an all-star race where you're going for the win. You don't really care about anything else. Checkers or wreckers.
And I'm really surprised NASCAR didn't make a spectacle like this, the all-star event, where it's a non-point event. But being that it is a points-paying event, I think a lot of strategy is going to play into it. Like I just kind of mentioned, that some of these guys are really going to take the strategic approach and really kind of try to make it to the end if their equipment holds up, because we really don't know how the fluff and all these different new terms that we're becoming accustomed to based on all of the stuff we've been exposed to this week. It's going to be interesting. I'm excited to kind of understand a little bit more about the dirt racing experience. Everything I've heard about, everything I've been in tune to this week, the keyword sounds like everyone's having fun.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to just dive into it, and I think it could be a fun week from a DraftKings angle. The thing I do want to caution people to is if you don't have a lot of money and you can't have a bunch of diversity this week, I'd kind of maybe tap the brakes on your entries because it's going to be chaotic. The lineups that are going to win, typically you're going to have a lot of diversity in them. So if you have quite a bit of money built up in your bankroll, this might be the week to really hit it heavy.
And I also think, too, because that's a good opportunity to
be really just diverse. Just
right.
Be able to understand that this is not a normal situation, and these don't come about very often. And if you can really find the right mixture of a combination of your core that you like and have that variant where it just hits a home run, you're going to be able to score a lot. And it's going to be kind of chaotic, and that's where you can really be different.
I think a good strategy this week is the same strategy we recommend for super speedways. Stack the back. And maybe not even take too many guys from up front because I don't know if we see a guy just get out front and run away with it. Because some of these guys that are real dirt racers, they're starting a little bit further back, especially Kyle Larson. Now, if he was up front, you probably got to hammer him in almost all your lineups because even if he doesn't win, he's probably going to lead a lot. But working through that field could be tough. But with these guys being so inexperienced starting from the front, they may get into each other early, kind of take each other out, and just by process of kind of elimination, all those guys in the back just start moving up, and that might be a really good strategy. I'm going to have some lineups with that, and I'll have some guys up at the front too. Like I said, I'm going to build some lineups. Normally I wouldn't do it just for guys that I like or would really want to root for, if you will. I'm going to do it this week because nobody knows what's going to happen.
So you had that big win in Vegas a couple weeks ago. You have a little bit of a bankroll built up. Unfortunately, you had a incident where your computer was stolen and you don't have it in front of you. So
true story.
It's impactful to your bankroll, but at the same time, you have a bankroll and you manage it.
Yeah.
This week, we've talked about it throughout the week, and we're going to be kind of cautious, but you have a larger bankroll. Are you going to go heavy? How are you approaching it? Because I haven't had the greatest success this year, but I've been consistent enough to have a decent little steady bankroll, and I'm going to play it fairly well because I think people are going to be really being just kind of crazy. So I want to have a target at it, but understanding you with a little bit bigger bankroll, what are you thinking?
Well, I'd say for the most part, you haven't really missed it too much. It's just you've been that guy that's gotten burned by Custer several weeks in a row, and I think a lot of people out there can relate. And plus a few other guys who Kurt Busch burned us both. So I think really both of us have been pretty consistent. I think I just got a little luckier with that one lineup in Vegas that, like you said, has given me a nice cushion in my bankroll, but I'll see how I feel Sunday morning. That's when I usually start building lineups. I might go heavier than I'm anticipating, but honestly,
you only have a few hours, so
yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna max out the 20 entry. I usually always do that one. That's the one I won the 5K or over 5K in.
It's usually what, $3 or $4, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's $4 this week, so about $80 there. May do the happy hour as well. That one's kind of fun. That one is the one I like to play as well because I can be a little bit more diverse, kind of cast a little bit wider net, and if it hits, it's still a good contest. So, but I really don't intend to go much higher than that just because the last 2 weeks haven't made any, haven't been on the green side. So I'm being a little cautious with the money that I do have in the bankroll because I don't feel as confident in this, and I just want to have fun. I think I'm going to take a little bit more of my money and actually do more straight up single bets. I think that's the avenue I want to kind of approach this week just because, again, you get to have a little bit more fun with it.
Yeah, you can almost have a somebody that you're rooting for or pulling for if you think that Christopher Bell's the favorite and you like the odds that are shown there, you can dabble in that rather than taking the DraftKings angle.
You may have an update. I'm getting something. Anything good?
Oh, just ticket information because it's changing. The information's changing by the minute, and you have to have your notifications on if you want to stay up. So I just got a Pocris update from Twitter. So you want to stay in tune with what's going on with everything that's changing by the minute. But
if somebody else has to change an engine like Larson, and go into the back, that can really impact your decision. If you're really trying to be strategic and take advantage of this week's wild card race, like you said, it really does depend on your personal bankroll strategy and what you feel comfortable with this week.
And talking contest selection, if you don't have a large bankroll, this would be the week to just sit back and just have fun with it and hammer those 25-cent, 50-cent, 20 entries and max them out and just throw a few bucks at it, or just have fun and just do a single entry on the fun GPP tournament that's always paying out like $250,000. Just go have fun with it. There's nothing that's wrong with just having one lineup and just enjoying the exposure and having a little bit of fun by watching who's on your lineup competing the race.
So another thing that we haven't really talked about yet is they did change the format on the stages, the stage links, and competition caution. So originally there was supposed to be one competition caution in the first stage. They've moved it. Now there's two. Both the stages, I believe, didn't both first and second stage, they got increased while the final stage got decreased. Is that correct?
Yeah, and let us mention now that we are not going to put out a race guide this week. Typically, we would have a race preview and all that fun stuff nicely and neatly laid out there. And it's available on our Patreon every week for free as we're continuing to try to grow our following and get more people out there to follow along with us and contribute with questions and all that. But you make a valid point that...
Well, and the main reason, we should just say the reason why we're not doing that this week is we just don't want to steer you guys wrong. And I think you can tell by how much we've said this is a wild card race. We don't know what's going to happen. That's the main reason why we're not putting out our normal content, because we are not going to pretend to be experts or act like we know or try to steer you guys in any one particular way. We're going to tell you who we kind of like, what we're going to do, but we're not trying to really lay it out in a specific way like we would normally do. Just we don't feel like that's right to do this week.
Absolutely. So we've pared it down. We're doing our podcast as we normally do. We're not going to do the race guide and the rundown like we typically do on Sunday morning.
I think we'll do the dark horse still. I have a good guy in mind.
Oh, absolutely. This is a dark horse kind of scenario. So
maybe we'll do two. We'll substitute the race guide for a second dark horse pick.
We gave them two last week with Kurt Busch and Stenhouse. Unfortunately, it didn't pay out very well. But
Kurt Busch looked really good though until Hamlin did Hamlin type things.
But he gave him flowers. It was all right.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Moving on to the Bristol Dirt Race. We've got the race length is 133.25 miles. Very short. It's an endurance kind of deal. It's on a half-mile track, which Bristol is. They're doing 250 laps, which basically allows...
It's a long dirt race, by the way.
It is very long for a dirt race. The performance points that are available actually is 175. It's not too bad, so you would like to see somebody that you have in your lineup lead a handful of laps. The stages are 100, 150, and for fun, Kevin Harvick won here last at Bristol. No dirt on the track at the time, but can you break down the stages? I know that there's competition cautions in there. You want to go into that?
Yeah, so essentially what you can look at this as is it's 5 stages of 50 laps. So they're not allowing them to come in and pit under green or even under caution. The only time you can come in and fix your car, put tires on, anything like that, unless you have a tire going down, they say you can come in and change that tire only. But any fueling, I guess they probably actually, I don't know if they're going to do much fueling, just maybe once or twice. But tires, they're going to want each 50 lap segment based on what we saw in practice. So essentially this is 5 stages of 50 laps is the way you can look at it.
That basically takes us now into the DraftKings breakdown. Driver by driver, and we already started with Kyle Larson at the top because I think he was one of everyone's favorites because he's starting on the pole, and unfortunately, we talked about just a little bit earlier, he had the engine issue and he's starting in the rear. That's so impactful on this race because of some things that we discussed with having to pass so many cars and just the sheer unknowns that are involved. Paying $12,000 for somebody starting in 39th place with a number 1 driver price tag, it's hard to do.
Yeah, do you want to update the I can't see the finishing position points. You have to do that side, but I want to kind of see what we need him to do to pay off that price tag because this is not necessarily like a week where we have to go as deep as we would normally do in a podcast. We probably won't even touch on every driver here just because who knows how this is going to play out. But I think the biggest question is, okay, what does Kyle Larson have to do now that he's starting from the rear? Is it possible for him to be worth playing still, or do we need to just kind of pivot off of him some? So if he's just gets back up to first and doesn't do much,
it's not pretty.
There's no point in playing him, but he obviously will get fastest laps.
He'll get a few fastest laps, and even doing fastest laps, there's not a whole bunch available with everybody throughout there, and he's not going to be the fastest guy every single lap.
I think I also saw, too, that caution laps don't count. So it's only green flag laps. So that is kind of important. That means there are 250 fastest laps up for grabs. So if we do something like that,
let's give him a scenario where he wins the race, gives him 50 fastest laps. At that point, even that seems almost to a point that's unachievable, but he could get there. Give him 15 more laps led. Just say he's able to lead a little bit there at the end. That's 6x value. That's not bad, but that's almost really difficult to do, and we don't know how that's going to look. It's cautionary.
But here's the thing. As fast, because like I said, he was the fastest guy in both practice.
I agree.
By a good little margin, too. In that second practice, his overall, how they calculate it, 20.8 seconds per lap. Second place was Martin Truex, which is actually a bit of a surprise. He might be a good little kind of sleeper guy. I don't know how much of a sleeper he is. I mean, he is second on the practice too. But anyway, his is 21.0. Like that's a decent gap. So with him having all these breaks every 50 laps, he can easily make his way back up to the front by the end of stage 1. And if he does that, and he is, and maybe he's just a little better than Bell and some of these other guys who have real good dirt track history, he can easily put up like a 50 lapper, and then you're looking at 80 points right there, and you're going to need him in your lineups, I think. But that's if he does that. He's going to be passing guys that are very inexperienced, and what if they do cut his tire and he has to come down and change that single one? I don't know how all that works, but that could really affect him, or just some extra body damage. That's difficult.
It's very difficult. This whole experience is going to be difficult. But you look at the driver right below Kyle Larson. We're talking about Christopher Bell. If we had to talk about somebody that might be more... If there was somebody that was a favorite, Kyle Larson's the guy, followed by Christopher Bell, in my opinion, because he has experience in dirt racing. Him and...
Adam Stevens.
Yeah, him and Adam Stevens together... both have that experience on dirt racing. Talking about Bell and Larson, they were competing this past year at the Chili Bowl in midget cars on dirt for the win. So these two guys understand what's going on. Adam Stevens with Christopher Bell, in my opinion, those two together have the advantage. And from a DraftKings angle, whenever I'm seeing him $1,000 less, starting 15th, he doesn't have that negative downside that now Larson has. He is absolutely my favorite. I don't see very many lineups where I'm going to be off of him, because I think he's key to having a lot of success in your DraftKings lineups, but being different because everybody's going to have the same perspective. Could be an opportunity to be contrarian and not play him. But looking at it, it's juicy.
Of course, yeah. Bell will most likely. Well, he'll with the Larson going to the rear, and being $1,000 more, I find it hard to. I just don't see Larson being a higher percentage owned driver than Bell. I think Bell's just going to come up juicy because he's got the PD upside. He's got the experience. The combo between him and Adams is the most experience, I think, for any team. So there's a huge advantage there. So Bell should be the highest owned driver. Now, will he? I don't know. There's some other guys that are, Stuart Friesen might come in higher because he's a dirt guy and he's got a ton of PD upside. But Bell should be, with what we know now and how things with Larson go to the rear, Bell should be the number one guy. But one thing that I do want to point out, you mentioned Larson and Bell were going for the win in this most recent Chili Bowl. Bell has won 3 Chili Bowls, I believe, but he wrecked and finished out of the race going for it with a faster car than Larson, but lost control, and he flipped several times. Don't expect him to flip this week, but if he's going for it, he's a guy, he's so aggressive and he trusts himself, but he doesn't have the experience in this car. It could easily get away from him, and then you're sitting with a guy that a bunch of other people have that maybe he finishes pretty far back there.
That's what I was getting at towards the end of my statement, was the contrarian play would be to fade him completely. And all those guys that are out there building a lot of lineups have 50% exposure not towards Bell, and you're going to be really, really in a good position. You talk about aggressiveness. The next guy on the DraftKings salary list is aggressive AF, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 10-2. Starting 13th, offers very similar upside. This could be something that we're looking at Ricky Stenhouse at the end of the day, where he's sitting at the front of the, I guess, just sitting in winner's circle.
Well, there's a reason why.
Demolition Derby brings Ricky Stenhouse to the front.
Or to the record yard. Yeah, can have me. But there's a reason why we actually put him out front on our list here because normally we wouldn't put him out there, but he does have a ton of dirt track experience. He's a dirt racer, and he is aggressive, and you're going to need to be that. But I was really disappointed to see him priced up this much on DraftKings when I saw that. He does have that PD upside, but I would have liked to have seen him either cheaper starting there, or that price tag, maybe starting 20th, because he wasn't that great in practice. He didn't put up the best lap times. He didn't, if my memory serves correctly, he didn't do that well at the Chili Bowl, which completely different cars, but was a little bit of a surprise letdown there. I mean, good, but not what we were kind of expecting or maybe hoping for. So Stenhouse is definitely a guy I will play in some of my lineups because I recognize the upside and his talent on dirt, but I honestly don't really like his position on the DraftKings board this as much as I was wanting to.
And again, there's so many unknowns and so many guys that don't have experience here. We're touching on guys at the top of the salary list that they're up there for a reason. They have some previous experience. Chase Briscoe, albeit he's a rookie.
He might actually be the number one guy because he's won a truck race at Eldora. And he's got a ton of dirt experience. And he's looked, I think the first practice he was off, but I think it was the second one he was on, or maybe vice versa. I know there was some decent 10th, in the second practice. That, and with all that PD upside, I don't really like Briscoe this year because he's burned us already a few times, but man.
Yeah,
that looks good.
Under 10,000, he's at 9,900. He's one of those guys that offers the upside because he does offer experience in this scenario where he has experience on the dirt race track before, and being 25th, he offers that PD upside that we're always looking for. And in a situation where you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like a super speedway where you might want to have a little bit more exposure to the guys in the back. He would be somebody that you could take a look at starting 25th. He does have a little bit higher price tag, but because of that PD upside, might be worth it.
Yeah, I will go to, wait a minute, make sure that, we didn't resort these. That's why it's all off. Okay, so the pricing should be correct. I just wanted to make sure because it obviously was a little out of order.
You can cut that. Let's take a break real quick.
And we're back. Had to take a little pit stop. Had to get a little refueling and fix our spreadsheet so we can go in proper order. So now we can touch on a guy that we missed. Tyler Reddick, who might be one of my favorite plays. Starts 27th, 10-5. Looked good in practice. I know it doesn't count for much, but he also looked good in the Pro Invitational when they were racing on dirt on Wednesday. Are you going heavy Reddick? You going to fade him? What are you thinking with his position there?
Well, just hearing your Pro Invitational throwback, it's funny to see people think it actually add some perspective to it. I'm not buying into it. I think he's in a great spot. He really is starting 27th at 10.5. He offers a lot of upside. I'm going to be very I'm going to have him in a lot of lineups because I think he could be key because he does have what we're looking for, experience. We've talked about it already. There's a lot that he has to offer from a DraftKings angle where he is starting so far back that he offers that place differential. He has that experience. That's why he's going to be key to some of these lineups, I think.
I'm going to push back on what you just said just a smidge because overall I do agree with you, but there are two drivers that, before practice any of that, I wasn't going to consider much from the Pro Invitational, but there were two drivers that I thought really on practice, the way they were driving their car looked about how they were driving in the Pro Invitational, and it was working for them. One of those guys was Tyler Reddick. The other guy that I saw that I liked was Alex Bowman. Surprising to me, the way he was. I don't know if you saw his Twitter much leading up to Pro Invitational, but man, he was dropping some some pretty funny tweets talking about like his computer. He's about to start the race, and it's like this is a crucial update, and he could only keep postponing it. He couldn't ignore it. He had to keep pushing it back by an hour, and he's like, this is virtually frustrating or something like that. He was being really funny. I really didn't expect much from him, and he was really fast at times in that Pro Invitational. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what he does in the real stuff. Also looked really fast. I don't want to start talking about Bowman too much now because he's down the list a little bit, but the point being, I saw the same thing in Reddick, me personally. He was getting it. He surprised me. I don't think he's one of those guys that's considered to have a lot of dirt experience, but this track may lend to riding up against the wall. We know Reddick likes to do that. With that starting position, yeah, you got a little bit of a high price tag, so you're gonna have a hard time fitting. I don't think you can go, the top 3 guys in your lineup, nor would you really want to. But I think Reddick has got to be a staple if you're going multiple lineups. I think you want to have a decent amount. At least that's from my perspective.
Yeah, and then we go on down the list. Ricky Stenhouse next. We talked about him already. Chase Briscoe, we touched on him a little bit. Is there anything else you want to touch on Briscoe regarding him? I think he's a rookie, but offers a little bit of experience in a race like this. He's in a very similar situation to Tyler Reddick with starting position. Offers a little bit of a discount on the price tag. So somebody you might look at a little bit more, just considering that angle of it, just the discount that you're receiving from the price tag.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the ownership shapes out between Reddick and Briscoe, because I think, if you consider experience, Briscoe should come in heavier, like heavier owned. And I think he should be in, again, if you're playing several lineups, you're going to want to have some exposure to him, I think, because of that experience. But like you said, it's a rookie. Nobody has experience in these. I don't know how much dirt track experience you can really say gives these guys an advantage in cars that they've never raced on dirt before. So I do like Briscoe. I don't like the 9,900 that you got to pay for him, but you get that PD offset. So yeah, you got to play him, but not one of my favorite guys. I kind of like the guy below him, Austin Dillon, 9,700, starting 9th. I'd like a little more PD. Has not been particularly impressive in practice. That does worry me. I would like to see him in the heats to see what he could do. But I gotta go to him because he's done really well in dirt this year so far.
Yeah, and he is the first Eldora winner in the Truck Series back a couple of years ago when they started racing there. He was the first winner to win it. So he has the ability to win on dirt. Going back a little bit and talking about how much of an opportunity it is for these guys that have the experience. I've listened and watched a lot of stuff trying to get prepared for this episode and understanding how to approach this. And from things I've seen and read and listened to, the ability of these drivers that have had exposure to dirt, the dirt changes. If you watched any of the practicing events from the trucks that got on the track before to when Cup was racing, or Cup was on the practice circuit, that the track really did change from even a viewer perspective. There was a lot more dirt and everything, or dust and things by the time the Cup cars got out there, and there was more rubber being laid, and you could see the black in the middle of the track. So if you know how to get around the track on a dirt circuit and you've had that experience and you know how to read the track, I really think it does benefit these guys a little bit more. And Austin Dillon has shown that he's been able to win in a situation like this before. Not a huge advantage on place differential, but starting in the top 10, he doesn't have as many cars to pass. He has the opportunity to get to the front a little bit easier, and he's got to win in a similar situation. So somebody that I would like to target a little bit more heavy, but I think a lot of people will understand the same path to success could be through him, is going to be interesting how much exposure folks have to him.
It will be fun to see how this plays out, because you know, take kind of Larson out of the equation, just given everything we've already mentioned about him. Obviously, he was top of the charts in speed, but going to the rear, some of the other guys that were doing quite well don't have that dirt experience, and they don't necessarily know how those lines are going to run, but they were still showing good overall speed. They may not have had the fastest laps overall, but we were typically seeing guys going out on their first lap, probably when the engines are the coolest, creating the most horsepower, all that stuff. That's when they were typically throwing down their fastest laps. So that kind of skews it a little bit, but guys like, you know, Hamlin and Truex, they were running really well. And those aren't, I don't think Hamlin has hardly any, if any, dirt experience. So I totally understand what you're saying about these dirt drivers having the experience on how the track is going to change. And that's what I was expecting before practice. But those guys ran a lot of laps, and those non-experienced drivers were still they were holding their own. So I don't know if we're going to see as much dirt experience dominate this race as what most people were thinking going into it.
Well, you mentioned two big names there in Denny Hamlin and Martin Truex. The next guy on our list, based on salary, is not a big name for just the casual NASCAR fan. Stuart Friesen, 9,500, starting 32nd. If you don't know anything about NASCAR, you don't really know anything about Stuart Friesen, and he's somebody that has a lot of dirt track experience. We just got done talking about why it could be valuable. It's valuable from a DraftKings angle to look at Stuart Friesen because he's starting 32nd towards the back, and he, with that $9,500 price tag, what, in the top 8 guys in the salary, that's a lot to ask. But if you look at it from the DraftKings angle that we're looking at, he offers a lot of upside, especially with the experience. I'm torn if I want to have too much exposure to him or not. What are you thinking?
Personally, I'll build maybe, you know, 2, maybe 4 or so lineups out of those 20 I mentioned earlier that contain Friesen, maybe. But he'd have to do something really impressive, and I don't think he's going to have the equipment to necessarily hold up. We already saw Larson cook a motor, and he doesn't have the Cup experience. He does have a ton of dirt experience. That's obviously why he's running. But I think he's a little overpriced even with that PD. You know, he's got to finish 15th basically to hit 5X. And that's doable, but that's not very good. There's other guys around him that we've already mentioned and guys we're about to talk about that I think offer a little bit more upside with lower ownership. Because I think a lot of people will see that 32, they'll look up the name and see, oh, wow, he's got a lot of dirt track experience and all that other stuff. And, you know, they won't really be able to pull too much from the trucks because the trucks are going to race after the Cup guys. But personally, I don't like Friesen that much in most of my lineups this week.
Well, next on the list, Ryan Blaney, 9,300, starting third. Last week's winner. Somebody that has a little bit of experience on dirt. He's going to be an interesting play this week. I think
he owes Logano some sort of dinner or something to help. I think he helped him out a little bit with that win. Hard to say for sure, but I think the way Larson was running, I think Logano made it a little harder for Larson to pass than he made it for Blaney. So, you know, I think Logano gets an assist if you want to kind of put it, you know, kind of put it in hockey terms. He gets the assist there. I think he had the fastest or second fastest overall lap in practice 2, I believe it was, which was a little surprising.
Yeah, he had the fastest lap in practice 2.
But it might not surprise too many because his dad apparently is pretty much a legend in the dirt circuit. And he does have some dirt experience, not nearly as much as his dad, but third. Well, he's going to be starting, I think.
He'll be second.
He'll be
on the front row with Denny Hamlin because of Kyle Larson going to the back. That, in my eyes, opens up the door for him without Larson being at the front to potentially be someone that could dominate this race.
Well, not only that, and I may be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure when the pole position guy goes to the rear, the guy who's now starting first, he doesn't get lane choice. So I think he stays in second. I don't think he moves up to first. I think that whole inside line moves up one. So I may be wrong. We'll see how it plays out. I think Laney's going to get the inside lane, potentially. If he does, if I'm wrong there, I apologize. But if he does have that inside lane, he might get out front and be a guy that leads laps and can get a top 10 finish and maybe pay off that price tag fairly easy.
Yeah, because right below him is Denny Hamlin on the salary board. He's 9,100 starting second. We talked about Larson going to the back. Now Blaney and him being in a scenario where this is going to be impactful. Which one do you go with? Do you have more exposure to one or the other? I'm torn between the two this week. I think Blaney offers a little bit more upside than Denny Hamlin does because of some previous experience, but we'll just ultimately see. What are you thinking about this?
Hamlin surprised me because he was pretty fast, and especially I think it was the second practice. But again, if he's not getting that inside spot on the start, and some of these other guys get around him, it might be a little tough. I don't know if he's going to be the guy that can actually get out there and lead a bunch of laps, but I think he can kind of hold his own and maybe still get a top 10 finish. So you might get a little maybe lower ownership there advantage. It's still kind of risky because he doesn't have that dirt experience. I don't know. I'll have to kind of see how lineups start to shape out as I build them. But Hamlin's not really one of my guys that I typically like root for. So if I'm going to play more guys I just really want to see do well, he's probably not going to end up in very many.
Well, Kyle Busch is on the list next, 8,900 starting fourth. He's a guy that
he's your favorite, so he'll probably be 70-80% owned, right?
He's not my favorite. I just picked him to win some races this year. Ultimately,
not just that, the championship.
Yeah,
come on now.
Well, he's still got some time to make that reality, and he needs to show something. But this could be a week that I think that Kyle Busch could just break through and just be just KFB. But
he's really good at Bristol. You cannot ignore that, but this is obviously not normal Bristol.
And at $8,900, you don't see that a lot. He is now up a position where he could really establish himself if he can get the hang of it and just drive. He's one of the best drivers in the world. And in my opinion, this year he's been a disappointment. And this could be the race that just sets him straight. So starting fourth at 8,900, I want to have a little bit of Kyle Busch.
Yeah, he should fit nicely into lineups.
On top of that, he was the third fastest in practice in the first round. He has a car that potentially could get around the track too.
Yeah, he was a guy who, he started doing some extra racing in other series leading up to Bristol, so he's trying to polish that up a little bit. He does got some dirt experience in his past. The tough thing about playing Kyle Busch is for $200 cheaper, you get the guy below him, and he starts 26, and that's Chase Elliott. So I want to build at least a couple lineups with Busch because you cannot. This would be a race that he could break out because of he's used to kind of those loose handling cars, and obviously they're on dirt. So I think it's a fine pivot off of some of these other guys. And again, maybe a lot of people overlook him because they know he doesn't have a ton of experience and he's struggling a bit this year. So I do understand why you would be high on him or at least playing him. I'll play him too, but I got to go a little bit more with Chase Elliott this week because of the experience he's put in since winning the championship. You know, he's competed in the Chili Bowl. He's competed in a lot of other dirt races. And because of the engine failure last week, you get some really nice place differential upside. And he looked good in practice.
He does offer a lot of upside. And this, like I said last week, I was kind of high on him because he was priced under $9,000. Look at him this week. Under $10,000 last week. This week he's priced under $9,000. He's at $8,700. When do you see Chase Elliott at $8,700? You don't.
You don't, yeah.
You don't. And he's a former champion. He is one of the best drivers in the world. I talked about Kyle Busch being one of the best drivers in the world just a second ago. Elliott is the former champion of this series.
And he also has run well at Bristol too.
He
Again, I
has.
know it's not dirt, but still.
And we've talked about how much experience on dirt is going to apply here and how they can read the tracks and all that. This, to me, though, obviously I think is going to be one of the keys where a lot of people are going to go to because they see the upside, and you don't ever see him price it high, but it's an opportunity to really buy in at Chase Elliott when he's at his lowest point and really take advantage of it.
So before we kind of start skimming through some of these other guys, because not everyone has to be talked about super heavy because most of them don't have much experience. One thing that we may not normally kind of consider, but I think it's worth considering, at least I'm asking you if you're considering this. Chase Elliott had motor issues last week at Atlanta. Was running really well, but something let loose fairly early in the race. I think he finished second to last. And in practice, his teammate Kyle Larson this week essentially cooked a motor, and they had to change it. Is there trouble with Hendrick Motors right now? Are they got a little issue that maybe we need to kind of consider a little bit? I mean, you don't normally see people cook an engine in practice, and his teammate, the same organization the week before has a motor issue, and they're not normally a team that has that. This is I don't want to say it's a pattern, but these are. I think it's worth considering. What do you think about that?
Well, I think Hendrick as a whole is pushing the limits this year. They're really trying to get everything that they can every week out of every ride. And we've seen them be successful with some wins with Kyle Larson and Willie B early on, and ultimately those guys have found a way to be in a situation where in the playoffs they're going to be sitting there nice and pretty. So I think they're trying to test the limits of the setups as much as they can. Don't forget Chad Knaus is now overseeing the entire race team. These guys are getting packages ready to go on race day that they can tweak and mess with, and ultimately these guys are pushing the issue every week, and we're seeing the results. So I'm ready to go.
Failing tech is one thing. We kind of expect that, and they had a lot of guys so far this year, and even going back to last year, fail inspection, have to go to the rear of the field, but still do well. I understand the whole, especially this year with Knaus there, but it's concerning that the engines aren't holding up to what they're doing. I don't think they're failing these inspections because of engine issues. I think it's stuff to do with aero and whatnot and certain setups. So, and I like that Hendrick's doing it because it shows that they're going for it this year. They're trying to get all their guys, as deep in the playoffs as possible. And this is the last year of this generation car, so they're throwing up these deep passes and doing quite well with them. But again, we kind of see this usually if a team starts having trouble with some motors, it kind of persists sometimes for a few races with a few different guys. Another team that they're associated now with and building these engines is RCR. So, I think Reddick's had a few little issues. I think he had an engine go out at some point this year too. Austin Dillon.
If I was concerned about that, I'd do it on a normal race. This is just another wild card race. I'm not as concerned because today we're talking about things that there's so many factors. I think that's a conversation for a different day because I completely understand where you're coming from, but there's so many things that are impactful with dirt and everything else that portion of it might not be as impactful as what we might think it would be.
All right, let's kind of get through these guys because hopefully it'll be race time soon for whoever is listening to this. So let's kind of help them out best we can. I think Bubba Wallace is a guy you got to consider this week. We don't know exactly what we're going to see with this car, but he doesn't have a lot of dirt experience, but he's got an Eldora win in the truck. So, and with starting 19th, 8,500, I think that there's some good upside there. And on a week, I think you got to consider him especially if you're playing a lot.
Yeah, you don't see him priced above Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex very often, if at
Brad
all,
Keselowski.
ever. But he does offer a little bit of experience, somebody you want to take a look at.
Might be a bit overpriced. I think.
Potentially, because where he's starting at 19th, he does offer a little bit of place differential. I would feel a little bit more confident than him, than Kevin Harvick at 8,100 starting 6th. Offers more upside, and there's nothing really with Kevin Harvick that excites me this week.
Other than the fact that he's 8,100 and his name is Harvick, and we know that he is a talented driver, I don't see a lot there. Truex at 8,000 starting 5th, potentially moving up a whole row because of the Larson going to the rear. With the speed we saw, even though he doesn't have the experience, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now that one thing we kind of want to point out, Harvick and Truex and several other guys and Bubba Wallace is, I know, one of them. They were racing in the truck series. They were supposed to race Saturday night. That way they have more experience for the Cup race. Well, now that's flipped. So now they're going to have more experience for the trucks. I don't like Truex as much now as I would have it after running the trucks. But I think that's a guy that I think will get a little overlooked, and he's been strong. He already has a win, so they can be a little bit more aggressive with some of their strategies, I guess, and Martin can just kind of hang it out, and hey, if you wreck, you wreck. You're still locked into the playoffs, and you're just going for the first win. So I do like Truex, but not as much now that he doesn't get the truck experience.
But he had the 6th fastest lap in the second practice. He has some upside there, showing that he can be fast. I have more confidence in him than Harvick at this point. But the guy on the list next, Kurt Busch, 7,800, starting 28th, to me is so enticing because he's been so fast this year. Forget about the dirt. I just know that Kurt Busch has been really consistent, and unfortunately last week didn't end too well, but he had a top 5 car with speed and everything.
And he was really good at Atlanta. I mean, who knows what he might have been able to do. I don't think he would have been contending with Larson most of the race. I think Larson just had the car basically until the very end. But I think Kurt Busch was really looking like a top 5 car, maybe even top 3 there for a while before the incident with Hamlin. So they're giving him good cars this year.
And he's an experienced driver, maybe not a ton of experience on dirt, but he's an experienced driver. And starting 28th, there's so much upside there. Again, I feel like I'm going to have a lot of exposure to Kurt Busch.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to starting 28th. Like I said, I think this will be a good week to stack the back. I will be playing Kurt Busch. We'll see exactly where I land as I actually construct these and see who's fitting where. Because I want to have some guy to the guy below him on the salary chart, Alex Bowman, 7,700, starting 7th.
Yeah, you touched on him a little bit earlier. Hendrick also had a lot of speed this year. It's going to be interesting because he had such a quick practice run in the second practice. He had the second fastest speed throughout. So somebody you might want to take a look at, especially in a tournament situation.
And he also was looking really good last week at Atlanta too. It seems like he was struggling at the beginning of the year, but they've been making improvements. And this could be a Bowman type race. I think he could really surprise a lot of people, and he may even be a guy that gets out front and leads quite a bit of laps early until maybe his teammate Larson finally catches up to him, or maybe Bell or something. But I think for a guy that we're assuming doesn't really have that dirt experience that we would maybe like to see, I think he might actually be one of my favorite plays overall, just because I don't know how many people are going to be on him when he's sandwiched between 2 guys with really good PD upside and also pretty big names.
Yeah, Brad Keselowski is next on the list, 7,500, starting 20th. Everything I saw, I'm really cautious about. He does offer that place differential that we're looking for. He's a great driver. He finds himself in the dirt on the road courses often, and still finds a way to finish. Somebody you might want to look at. Somebody that could be a cautionary tale as well.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot I saw in practice just watching Brad that I was like, okay, you need to kind of pay attention to him. I thought both his teammates looked better on the dirt, but he's got the experience. Just in these cars, he's a smart driver. I think he'll figure it out. But I think the biggest challenge for Brad is going to be keeping it clean, starting where he's starting at, and probably going to struggle a little bit. So if he gets his car too banged up, he might have a good run, but I don't think will be worth it really in your lineups.
So 2 guys next on the list: Chris Wyndham, Mike Marlar.
Don't know anything about him.
I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to tell you I know an ounce about either of these guys. These guys are coming in at 7,400 and 7,200, starting in the back because they didn't have an opportunity to race their way in. We have no idea what they're going to look like. They do obviously have some experience because they're getting put in a car for a reason. With those price tags, they don't need to do a lot. And with the Demolition Derby you talked about earlier, these guys could stand up and be somebody to talk about at the end that could potentially pay out and help you win some money. But I ultimately don't know if I want much exposure.
Yeah, I don't know. I might look a little bit into them. Probably not going to play them. I'll probably do maybe one lineup or two, kind of get a little bit of that PD in there. I don't know anything about him. I don't really care. I'm ready. Let's talk about William Byron because I think he's a guy that most people are going to be a little higher on than they should be because of the Pro Invitational win. We saw Vegas react to him. They dropped his, I don't remember exactly what his odds were, but he dropped like a significant amount just because of that Pro Invitational win. And it's like, dude, he's really good at this. Didn't look overly impressive in practice with that 8th starting spot. I think you can sprinkle him in because of what we've seen this year and the talent, but I think he's a guy that I would actually kind of pump the brakes on a little bit.
I agree. I think he's going to be somebody that is going to be very highly owned because of that Pro Invitational exposure. Somebody that has the potential and the ability to do well here, could pay out 7,100. You don't get a name like William Byron at that price tag often. It could be a tournament scenario, and if you're playing a lot of lineups, you might be able to sprinkle them in and have a little bit more success.
Ryan Newman is a guy I will be playing some this week because he actually really has a lot of, like, that's kind of how he got his start racing was dirt. He's got a lot of it. He's been really positive. Some of the drivers have been a little negative towards dirt racing. Hesitant is another word you could use. Ryan Newman has been embracing it. I think he hasn't been overly impressive as far as the speed chart and whatnot, but I think once he gets out there, he might be a guy that and we've seen some speed from him this year, and his teammate, Chris Buescher, I think he's a really good play at under 7,000 with a little bit of PD upside. I think some people will be sleeping on old Ryan Newman.
Yeah, if we were releasing the race guide, he'd be in our player pool at under 7,000. Starting at 14th, he offers some place differential, and one of those guys that has a lot of experience, and you really need that in a core situation whenever you're building up your lineups. You want some experience in that mix, so he adds to that, and is somebody that you could add as a pillar under $7,000.
Mm-hmm. Another guy that's coming in just racing dirt. I'm sure he's got some good upside too. I don't know anything about him. You don't know anything about him. He may end up in some lineups, but Matthew Benedetto, I think, is a guy that will be surprising to some people. He starts 12th, and he's got a salary of $6,700, which I feel is a little low for him because he is good at Bristol. We know that, and he's been in my opinion, looked pretty good in practice. Are you going to be high on Matty D this week?
So Shane Golobic is the guy that nobody's going to have any exposure to, probably starting 35th, and then you look at Matty D at 6,700, and you're like, there's a guy that is a little bit maybe more consistent in the name, but I don't know if he offers much upside starting 12th at 6,700. It's going to be difficult to want to play him, but at 6,700, he does offer a very much, or there's a big discount there that's available to you. So he will find his way in some of my GPP tournaments, but man, if there's a way that Matty D could find himself up at the front because of his consistency and just sheer want to win, like his will to win, this could be a race where he can find himself in a position to lock himself into the playoffs with a win. I don't think it's 100% doable, but this could be one of those races where it just lines up for him.
Ty Dillon, 6,600, 39th. You got to play him some because, he's got some talent, but he's not in a fast car. He wrecked in practice, damaged his car. I don't know the extent. It doesn't matter if he has to go to the rear because they have to change something. He's already starting at the rear. So you're going to want to squeeze him in there. There's really not much to say. He hasn't even run the full season this year, only a few races, but any DraftKings veterans, Ty Dillon usually pays out pretty well, and he doesn't have to do too much to pay off that price tag. Anything you have to say about Dillon?
Agreed with the veteran DraftKings players know that he is a good path to success.
Yaley, yeah, if you want to be a little contrarian, you could play him 34th, 6,400. It's all right. I'd rather go with Chris Buescher, 6,200. I know that he doesn't have the PD that we'd like to see, but he's run really good. I think he's looked good in practice. He looked good a little bit at times in the Pro Invitational. Again, not taking too much from that, but still, I'm going to be using some Chris Buescher.
Yeah, he's somebody that has the ability to get a top 10. He's somebody that at $6,200, I really do think that he offers a path to value relatively easily. Somebody I really want to have a decent bit of exposure to, but again, we advise people not to go too heavy.
I actually like Ryan Brees. He's looked good in practice, at least in my opinion, just getting around the track. He's looked good this year, and he was also really racy in that invitational. I'm not putting too much into it, but I think it's worth considering. He showed, hey, on equal cars, again, yeah, it's a sim, but a sim game, if you will. He impressed me, and I think for 6,000 and starting 22nd, why not play him? Yeah. I'd rather play him over Eric Almirola, 5,800, starting right behind him at 23rd. I think Parise has better upside on the dirt, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we saw Eric Almirola overheat in one of the practice sessions, so something that you want to consider there. Eric Jones is 5,600, starting 24th, very similar to Eric Almirola. These guys down here towards the bottom, there's not a lot that jumps out at you. Cole Custer follows them at 5,500, starting 21st. Might be kind of sneaky there. A lot of people have been
good practice times, really good practice times. And he's burns people so many times in their lineups. They might not want to go back to him this week, and I think that will be a mistake with Cole Custer. Yeah. I think he's in a good spot. 5,500, he doesn't have to do much.
Ross Chastain's next, 5,300, starting 17th. He's in an interesting position. Not a lot of experience, but somebody that doesn't have to pass a ton of cars to pay off value. You might want to have a little bit of exposure to.
He's gonna wreck somebody or get wrecked. I would like to have Chastain, but I don't think he's going to end up finishing this race. He's just too aggressive, and I think it's going to bite him this week. But if you want to roll the dice with them, I think it's worth it. I don't think I'll play much of him. I'd rather play McDowell, who starts right above him, 16th, and $100 cheaper at 5,200. Why not? He's looked good in practice, in my opinion. He's been strong. This is about the price tag you'd like to see McDowell when he's starting there anyway. So he's going to be there for me, I think.
Yeah, he's one of the guys last year that really allowed you to have a lot of success in your lineups because he was the key guy to adding value overall last year. Somebody that could find it this year, he's had early on success. He could get around the track fairly well and top or find a top 15 finish and reach that value. Looks like Corey LaJoie's next on the list at 5,000, starting 30th. He has a little bit of experience getting around a track. I just don't know about the dirt experience.
Actually, I think he's got some dirt experience. I think his family's kind of got some dirt experience. I may be mistaken. I'm trying to research so many different guys this week, but he would look good at times during the Pro Invitational. Practice so. He doesn't have to do much starting 30th. Excuse me. If some of these guys wreck out, like we think, there's a high chance that it can happen. He's that nice stack the back kind of guy that you're not paying too much for. So I think LaJoie's got to be there, but I also think you really got to consider Daniel Suarez this week. He's only 4,900. He's starting 18th and looked good last week at times. Real good, in fact, at Atlanta. Maybe that team's starting to figure something out. He doesn't have the dirt track experience, like none. But 4,900 doesn't have to do a whole lot. If he's able to get a top 15, that's fine.
Absolutely. He could be the key to allowing you to have access to some of the drivers on the top of the list that you're a little bit more high on and just be able to really be comfortable with the rest of your lineup. Like you said, starting 18th, you don't have to finish much better than that to pay off a price tag of $4,900. It's under $5,000. The guys underneath him, I have no really confidence at all rostering at any point. I don't even really think that they're worth talking about, honestly, because
they're only in that stack the back approach, in my opinion, and you're taking a big risk that they even finish this race because they probably won't.
They don't even have equipment that might be capable of finishing the race, in my opinion. So I would only look down to Daniel Suarez at 4,900 and feel confident. You might take a look at a stab at Anthony Alfredo, 2,800 or 4,800 at starting 29th. But that's the bottom of the barrel. And again, this is such a weird weekend that everything we just talked about, we talked about it for fun because nobody truly knows what's going to happen here.
I really think the best approach is just have fun with it this week. No matter what your approach is normally, always play within your bankroll budget. Be smart about it. Know that this thing could go really, really crazy. So be prepared to not cash anything, but also be prepared because it can go that way. It means it can go in your favor and you can do really well. So play within your means. That should always be the mantra. Never go outside your means when it comes to having fun, but and playing DraftKings. But I really think this is the week. Just sit back. Don't be really upset or bummed if your lineups don't pan out the way you want. Just enjoy the race because who knows when we'll see the Cup cars on a dirt track again. Maybe a lot in the future, but I think for right now, we know that it's only happening once this year and hasn't happened in 50 plus years. So my biggest advice is have fun with it. Play the guys you really want to play. If you're going to try to go strategy, that's our opinion on the strategy that we just laid out. Beyond that, there's really not too much else to say. I mean, I think we've pretty much covered everything that at least we can talk about as far as dirt racing goes.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where we're excited to see how it unfolds, and we want to have your involvement. If you have any questions or anything that you want to add, drop them below in the comments. Please make sure that you like and subscribe. It's the way we want to continue to try to grow this is this route, and we do that with your engagement.
Yeah, if you're a guy that knows a lot about dirt track racing and knows some of the errors that we may have spoken in this podcast, let us know in the comments below. But beyond that, this is the last race before break. We're off next week for Easter. So we'll be picking back up how we normally do things with the race guide, with everything else that we like to put out for you, the race day rundown, the more detailed podcast, everything, more strategy. We'll be back to how we plan on operating from here on out in 2 weeks.
Definitely a wild card race, and that's one thing that we're excited about, just kind of getting to witness it. First time in 50 years they've been on dirt. I'm ready to get the thing rolling. What about you?
yeah, sir, good luck, man. Who knows how this is going to go, but it's going to be fun either way. So good luck to you, and good luck to you guys out there.